Wednesday was anything but smooth for Sir Keir Starmer. Faced with mounting pressure and a growing chorus of critics from all sides, the Prime Minister appeared visibly unsettled, his carefully maintained image of composure slipping under the weight of relentless scrutiny. Whether it was backlash over his defence spending plans, growing discontent within his own ranks, or the ceaseless attacks from the opposition, one thing was evident: Starmer was on the defensive, and it showed. Rather than controlling the narrative, he found himself scrambling to justify his stance, struggling to hold ground against an increasingly frustrated audience. As tensions flared and exchanges grew heated, his usual measured demeanor gave way to visible irritation. Perhaps he was beginning to realize that his attempt at strategic compromise had satisfied no one and alienated many. For the Labour leader, the day served as a stark reminder that governing is a far greater challenge than campaigning, and that whatever goodwill he had built was now rapidly fading. The honeymoon period was not just over, it had been replaced with the harsh realities of leadership. Standing before Parliament, Starmer made a bold declaration. His government would initiate the largest sustained increase in defence spending since the end of the Cold War. Committing to spend 2.5% of GDP on defence, he promised to bring the target forward to 2027 and maintain that level for the rest of this Parliament. He emphasised the financial weight of this move, spelling it out for the Chamber. From 2027, this would translate to an annual increase of £13.4 billion. Yet, Starmer was keen to stress that modern threats extend beyond traditional military conflicts. Cyber warfare, sabotage, and assassination attempts from foreign adversaries were just as pressing as conventional threats. In response, he pledged additional investment in intelligence and security services, pushing total defence spending to 2.6% of GDP by 2027. However, he made it clear that this was just the beginning. Looking ahead, Starmer stated his ambition for European allies to do more, arguing that defence spending should rise further. He set a goal to increase defence expenditure to 3% of GDP in the next Parliament, subject to economic conditions and strategic needs. Yet, he was also careful to underline the necessity of financial prudence. Like any investment, we must seek value for money, he declared, unveiling a new defence reform and efficiency plan, jointly led by the Chancellor and the Defence Secretary. This initiative, he argued, would solidify the UK's leadership within NATO and bolster the nation's role in global security. But as the speech continued, it became clear that this commitment would come at a cost. To fund the increased defence spending, the government would cut development aid, reducing it from 0.5% of gross national income to 0.3% by 2027, a move met with both praise and condemnation. Starmer's pledge landed with a resounding thud, sparking criticism from across the political spectrum. Conservative leader Guy Bosch offered a rare nod of approval, acknowledging the decision to redirect foreign aid funds. Yet, Tory heavyweights were less forgiving. Former Defence Secretary Ben Wallace dismissed the plan as a staggering desertion of leadership, branding it tone-deaf to global threats. Former Cabinet Minister Grant Shapps echoed the sentiment, arguing that while the increase was necessary, it fell woefully short. His solution? Cutting waste in the civil service to push defence spending to 2.8%. Security must come first, he warned. Senior Tory Sir Simon Clarke went further, ridiculing the notion that 2.5% of GDP constituted a true war footing when nations like Poland and Lithuania were already surpassing Britain's efforts. This is Baldwin-esque, Clarke remarked, invoking memories of pre-war appeasement. His warning? Starmer was sleepwalking into history's mistakes. Yet, the fiercest backlash came from within Labour's own ranks. Labour MP Sarah Champion condemned the foreign aid cuts as deeply short-sighted, arguing that they could exacerbate conflicts rather than prevent them. Former Deputy Foreign Secretary Andrew Mitchell reminded Starmer of his past opposition to aid reductions, calling the move not just a U-turn, but a betrayal of Britain's moral standing. Under mounting criticism, Starmer insisted he was proud of his past votes, reframing this latest decision as a grim necessity. Yet, for critics on both sides, this announcement wasn't a bold new direction, it was simply too little, too late. The cracks in Starmer's defence plan began to show almost immediately. Hours after his much-hyped announcement, the numbers simply didn't add up. No 10's refusal to clarify key financial details only fueled the growing skepticism. On paper, the Prime Minister's proposal seemed ambitious, hitting 2.5% of GDP on defense by 2027, followed by a promise to push it to 3% in the next parliament. It appeared to be a clear response to the rising threats posed by Vladimir Putin and the uncertainty surrounding a potential return of Donald Trump to the White House. But scrutiny from the Institute for Fiscal Studies soon exposed troubling discrepancies. Senior economist Ben Zaranko accused Starmer of inflating the numbers, branding the £13.4 billion figure as more wishful thinking than reality. The actual increase, he argued, was closer to £6 billion, barely half of what Starmer had claimed in Parliament. Critics suggested that Downing Street was more focused on impressing Washington with grand promises than ensuring fiscal transparency. Further controversy erupted over a potential multi-billion-pound payout related to the Chagos Islands handover. There were growing suspicions that this settlement was being quietly included in the defense budget, artificially inflating spending figures without contributing to military capabilities. When pressed on the matter, Downing Street remained silent, refusing to clarify whether the funds would be counted towards Starmer's defense pledge. Shadow Armed Forces Minister Marc Francois warned that front-loaded payments for the islands could significantly diminish the supposed defense uplift. With Number 10 dodging key questions and the Prime Minister struggling to contain the backlash, Starmer's big defense moment risked turning into a fiasco. One thing was becoming increasingly clear: the numbers don't lie, but politicians sometimes do. Now, Starmer faces what could be his defining moment on the global stage. As he prepares for a high-stakes meeting with President Trump, the pressure is immense. This isn't just another diplomatic exchange, it's the most consequential UK-US summit since Harold Macmillan persuaded John F. Kennedy to maintain Britain's nuclear deterrent in 1962. Starmer must now achieve a similar feat, convincing Trump to remain committed to NATO, support Ukraine, and uphold the transatlantic alliance. The stakes couldn't be higher. Without an ironclad US commitment to NATO's Article 5, the doctrine that an attack on one member is an attack on all, European security could collapse overnight. Meanwhile, Vladimir Putin is rapidly expanding Russia's military, mobilizing 1.5 million troops, rebuilding his navy, and bolstering his nuclear arsenal. Economic sanctions have hurt Russia but failed to deter its aggression. The only deterrent is strength, and that requires superior firepower from the West. While Britain is increasing defense spending, is it enough? Starmer's targets may look impressive on a spreadsheet, but without real improvements to war-fighting capability, they remain empty promises. The uncomfortable truth: hard sacrifices are inevitable. With government spending at record levels, further cuts will be necessary. Starmer has already slashed foreign aid, a controversial yet pragmatic move. But will he go further? If defense truly comes first, it must take priority over political convenience. This moment could define Starmer's legacy. If he succeeds, he cements Britain's role in global security. If he fails, he risks leading the nation into an era of dangerous uncertainty. He told Parliament that the defense and security of the British people must always come first. Now, in Washington, he must prove that he means it.